This is Support is Sexy, episode 339, with Calibe Thompson, executive producer of Blondie Ross Productions and creative director of Island Syndicate. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I interview inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and their lessons to help you take your business and your life to the next level and create something sexy. Here we go. Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm happy to have you here. It just would not be the same without you. And today I am excited to welcome Calibe Thompson. And Calibe is an executive producer of her own television show. She has her own magazine, and she is really creating a space for Caribbean culture throughout media. She talks about how she's been going about this for a long time and how the road isn't always easy. As we know, there's a lot of twists and turns, and what I love about the conversation with Calibe is she is a reminder that you have to do the work even when you don't know the how. We talk about the how a lot on this podcast. Sometimes you just don't know how it's going to work, but you have to continue to do the work. So what else you'll hear from Calibe on this episode is the power of empathy, why you have to say yes before you're ready, the importance of asking for support from your community. You know, we're all about it. Why you must follow up, the process of pitching your show to PBS. So if you're interested in doing anything like that, make sure you listen out. Also, luck is when preparation meets opportunity, and how to delegate and build your team. So I know you're going to enjoy this episode. Calibe, I'm so happy and appreciative of you for being so open with us about your journey and about entrepreneurship. You know, it's not always pretty, but it is rewarding. So now, without further ado, Calibe Thompson. So Calibe, thank you so much for joining us for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to chat with you.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Excellent. So our first question, when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
I think that is, I'm going to say at birth. My father has always kind of been an entrepreneur, even when he was working for whichever company he was working for back in Jamaica. He had a side hustle. He would tell me that his own mother never worked for anyone. She would sew clothes for the people in the community and raise her goats and do that kind of stuff. And so I remember being a kid, maybe in prep school in Jamaica and, you know, selling candy because my father would fly back and forth to Miami all the time. And, you know, he would bring bags of bubble yum or the blue lollipops, and I would take them to school and just sell them to the other kids, which was a no-no. But you know, it's I think that's been in my blood since a very young age.
Did you ever have a desire to do anything else along the way, or was entrepreneurship, because it was so prevalent in your life, the thing you knew you were going to do in some way?
Bear in mind that entrepreneurship is such a broad thing that you know, you can be working for other people and still have an entrepreneurial spirit about you. So I have had jobs all throughout life, like everyone else. You do your internships and you do your entry level, whatever it is that you're doing. But I've had jobs, and I've been, I'm going to say, generally miserable when I'm working for someone else, not necessarily because of the type of work, but because of feeling kind of constrained, like you don't have much of a say in your destiny. I'm saying that still knowing that while I was at, you know, one job or another, I was always working toward getting to a better position in that job. But the knowledge that a better position ended somewhere, you know, it ended at this job title, or it ended at this salary, or it ended at somewhere that was beyond my control, has never been attractive to me. Being confined to a box or a cubicle or what has never been attractive to me. I love to travel. I love to, you know, even though I'm often relegated now to sitting behind a computer all day long, it's doing stuff that I know is building my own brand and building an empire. And it's not necessarily making as much money as I'd like, but you walk into a meeting with someone or a situation where money can come about. And at this point in time, I know I've built enough of a track record and a legacy in terms of the quality of work that we're doing, that it will come. And yeah.
Excellent. Now, you were born and raised in Jamaica, right?
Correct. Yes.
What was a young Calibe like?
Chubby.
Oh, and cute, I'm sure.
I don't know about that. my parents will probably tell you yes. I'm not sure about anybody else. But no, I liked food. I was not a very active child. I loved television and pop culture. And, we had a satellite dish, which was not something that everyone had. I did have a little bit of a privileged childhood. I'm not going to say that we were wealthy or anything like that, but I did have a privileged childhood. I had a very good education. My parents made sure that we didn't want for food or clothing or anything like that. We traveled to England and to Canada and to various states in the U.S. And so I feel like I was cultured in a particular way. I did go to work at my father's businesses. So, when he had a gas station, I would go and pump gas and try and get tips. When he had his travel agency, I would answer the phone and take messages and greet people at the door. We as kids learned to be honest, to be well-mannered, to have good work ethic. As a teenager, I remember wanting to be independent and wanting a certain level of independence. So in Jamaica, if you're middle class or upwards, you have what is called a helper. You say maids in America. We say helpers in Jamaica. Mm-hmm. And that's just a typical job. Everyone has a helper. They come in 1 day a week, 3 days a week, whatever it is. They come in and they cook and they clean, and it's a job. Pretty much like you'd have a secretary or a gardener or whatever it is here. That's just a part of an organization. A helper is a part of your household in Jamaica. And I as a child, I never had to spread my bed. I didn't have to, I would be called spoiled often. And now looking back, I probably was a little bit spoiled. But it got to a point where I was 12 years old and I didn't know how to take a bus and I didn't know how to cook anything. And I would say to my mother or say to the helper, can you please step aside and allow me to tell me what to do? I'll season the chicken and cook the chicken. Tell me what to do. And they would try and put a seasoning in and I'd slap their hand away and say, no, let me learn how to do it. And I still am not a very good cook, but as a child, I was one of those who wanted to learn and be independent. And even though I could be picked up in a nice car from school every day, there was a point where I just said, no, stop. I'm going to figure out how to take the bus. And there were no cell phones at the time, but I'd have a friend who knew how to get to this, from this point to this point. And I'd say, no, I'm going to go with this friend or I'll walk with this friend or whatever. And just try to be as independent as possible, because mortality and reality have always been just very clear and present to me. And I knew then that I would not necessarily always have the facility of parents taking care of me and what have you. But I think I also knew from that point that, they say the birds of the air and the fish in the sea don't have to do a hard day's work to get by. I've always felt that I would be taken care of by I'm going to say by the universe. I'm not a religious person, but I'm very spiritual. Mm-hmm. And I'll say that I've always felt like I would be taken care of by the universe, such that even if I'm not earning a whole bunch of money and I don't know where I'm going to sleep, or, I've had those times in life where I don't know where the resources are going to come from. I have always felt like I'm going to be taken care of in some way. I've never gone hungry, etc., even now. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Now, what would you say were some of your greatest influences at that time, especially because it seemed like you were very in touch with, as you said, that it won't always be like this. Things could change, and that's not something that usually a teenager is highly aware of, or even wanting the independence when you've been taken care of in such a way that has been part of your life, not even spoiled, just how life was. What do you think it was that was influencing you at that time? Your greatest influences?
I am going to say a level of spirit. I've always had a level of spirituality, and I there was a point where I ended up wanting to be in the church because I guess that was supposed to be a thing, you know. There were other people who were in the church and it was a fashionable thing to do, and that was how you're going to find salvation, and you know, all of that kind of stuff. And I went to one particular church and became friends with a young man who was dating a friend of mine, and they were all at that church together. And somehow I was painted as a bad influence, or I don't know if somebody used me as an excuse for something. But the young man's mother called me one day, and she was one of these, you know, big church, you know, influencers in the church and what have you. And she called me and she cussed me out and called me, you know, I'm not verbatim, but a harlot and a this and that and whatever, because I was friends with her son, who really was just like a very platonic friend. And after that, I stepped away from church because I realized that church was not the thing that was going to fulfill anyone, or church and religion weren't the things that made people good or wholesome. It was who you were as a person. And it was not, you know, what you projected onto other people that was the thing that was going to make you a good person. It was who you are and what you believed and how you made other people feel. After how that woman made me feel, you know, looking towards her, I didn't feel bad because I am who I am, and I've always been very self-aware that I control my mind and all of these kinds of things. But looking at this woman and how she was trying to make me feel, and you know, it kind of just made me step away from thinking about everything else and how I should feel bad because of religion and what the church was saying, and started moving me towards more of an empathetic type of thought process and way of living. And so, you know, we learned that word empathy when I was in prep school, and it reached me, it connected with me for whatever reason. And empathy has been a way of life for me, even to such a point that I remember having a conversation with an older gentleman while I was a child. And as I said, I was a chubby child. And in Jamaica, there's no such thing as political correctness. Like, somebody is black, somebody's very dark skinned, you call them blackie. Somebody has one foot or one eye, you call them one. If somebody has large eyes, they're called bulby. And so, you know, we don't have the sensitivities in America that we have in America. We don't have those in Jamaica. But me being this spoiled, coddled child, I stood beside this man one day outside of my father's office, and I was eating something. And he goes, "Lord, how you eating so much food, fatty?" And I started crying. I'm like, he goes, "Oh, what happened? What happened? Why are you crying?" And I said, "You're mean to me. Why are you calling me fatty?" And he said, "I'm not calling you fatty. It's just, you know, that's just what it is. That's, you're fat. I'm calling you fatty." And, you know, I had been, it did strike a nerve. But I think that was the balancing point for me with understanding empathy and understanding how your words can affect other people, as well as this just thing of reality. He wasn't wrong. Like, I was a chubby child. I could take offense to him calling me fatty, or if I was uncomfortable with being chubby, I could do something about it and go exercise and go try and change my way of life and be the person that I want to be. Not to say that everyone who is a little bit chubby, or, you know, as we'd say in Jamaica, fluffy, we find ways to make everything cute in Jamaica. So they'll say you're fluffy now if you're a little bit chubby. And I think it's fine to be chubby, or it's fine to be super skinny, or it's fine to be whatever you want to be. But I was uncomfortable in that situation. And so it said, that whole interaction just said to me, if you don't like where you are, don't complain about it, do something about it. I'm the only person who could do anything about it. So it just became this thing of reality and realizations, and becoming very self-aware and tapping into, I guess, I didn't know that, to call it universal consciousness or whatever we call it. No, but I had that awareness, I think, from very young.
It's so interesting you mentioned empathy. I'm reading a book right now, The Power of Empathy. I don't have it nearby, but it's so good. And it's just all about, I'm all into support and connection, and I'm reading more about it. But empathy is such a powerful thing.
It is.
Yeah,
it is.
That we don't recognize. So when did you then make the move to the States? You're in Miami now, right?
I am in South Florida, and I'm in downtown Fort Lauderdale, actually.
Oh, Fort Lauderdale.
Yes. And so this is an interesting story. I actually went to school for architecture. When you're a teenager, you do stuff. I did a little bit of drama club, and I wasn't very successful with that. I did a little bit of choir, and I didn't enjoy it. I did Girl Guides, and I did, and one of the things, but I did enjoy singing. And while I didn't enjoy the choir at school because they were making us sing all these weird sounding British accented church songs, I found a little girl group that I became a part of, and ended up, just being kind of groomed by Sly and Robbie, who are, yeah, you know who they are. Yes. Everybody doesn't know who they are, but they're pretty legendary Jamaican producers. They've worked with, Sting and No Doubt and the Rolling Stones, and they've had a pretty legendary, a pretty historic career. And so I was kind of groomed by them at a studio called Mixing Lab, and I was in this girl group, and so I was around them for many years while I was going to high school, and then while I was going to college for architecture. And at the end of my bachelor studies in architecture, I worked at an interior design firm for a while, and but always preferred singing. And I had an opportunity at one point through Sly and Robbie. I ended up being on a Beanie Man album, Tropical Storm.
Look at you.
Yeah, look at me. Right? So I was featured on my vocals were featured on. They didn't put my name on there, but my vocals were featured on a song on that album. And so when it came time for him to do the promotional tour for the album, they were looking for somebody to do the Janet Jackson parts. He was promoting Feel It Boy at the time. And I ended up being at the top of a short list and was called away to do this tour with Beanie Man. And so I was like, peace, architecture, I'm out of here. Wow. And so I traveled with him for maybe a year and a half. But, as I said, I was educated. I like reading, or at the time I was a little bit better at reading and just wanting to absorb education at the time. And music industry in general, people are not about education. They're about partying and vibes and all of that kind of stuff. And so being in that environment was not nurturing the other side of me that I wanted to be in more control and feel like I was developing something, not just to support, not just part of a support system for someone else, but developing something of my own. And so it got to the point where I was coming from one island back to Jamaica via Miami airport, and my sister lived in Miami, and I called her. I was like, Carol, I can't deal with this mentality of what I'm around anymore. I'm coming to stay on your couch for 2 weeks, and I just never left.
And you've been there ever since.
I've been here ever since. That was maybe 2002. I did several more tour dates with them, but it just got to a point where I didn't want to be around that anymore. And I had met Kevin Little and his manager while I was on tour with Beanie Man, and they were looking for somebody to become a part of Kevin's support vocal group and what have you. And so they recruited me. I actually ended up touring with Kevin for a little while, and it was a little bit better because I was able to open for him and do some of my own material and what have you. But that again got to a point where I wasn't feeling like I was in control of anything, and I kind of stepped away from the music industry for a while. Worked. We're talking about when was there a time when I wasn't an entrepreneur? I was working at a hotel in South Beach. And even then, I started off at the front desk, and I think within 6 months, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do sales. And the manager said to me, oh, but we don't have a sales department. And I said, well, I'm going to become the sales department. And they actually switched me over. They switched me over from front desk to sales. And so that was my I'm not going to say my first foray into having to sell stuff, but it was a good intro into to just dealing with people at that level and dealing with the corporate community and so forth.
Wow. So when did you get to the point then that you decided to start Island Origins, the digital magazine?
That's been several years in the making. So I left the hotel after a few years and went into to just being a support person for a very entrepreneurial cousin of mine. And I surround myself with people who like to do things that are their things. So I'd worked with my cousin for a while. His business didn't survive. I had started doing a little handmade card business. I've always been into arts and entertainment and so forth, and ended up back on the road with somebody. I forget who it was. And I came off of stage at a show one day and somebody put a microphone in my hand and said, "Here, talk to this camera." And it ended up being a situation where for about a year, I was just walking around, and the people I knew from the music industry, I would interview them backstage, and I was sent to go edit the stuff myself because this guy was, he was like just shooting, and you go edit the stuff by yourself. And so I started learning and understanding how to put video, properly produced, not the stuff that you see flung up on YouTube, but properly produced video clips together. Mm-hmm. And I have an issue where anything that I know I can fling stuff up on YouTube or fling stuff up on Facebook, but I prefer that things be of a particular quality and caliber. So I would put together these little video clips, and at the end of a particular time, I did a short series of workout videos with a friend of mine from the gym. And I did a pilot for a show that would end up becoming, Taste the Islands. I borrowed a friend's kitchen and we partnered up with Chef Irie here in South Florida. And we shot some pilot episodes in her kitchen, and they sat on my computer for a while because I was just getting annoyed with everybody and the fact that you don't have any money. And, I'd sold my car because I didn't have money to get this project off the ground, and nobody believed in me at the time. And so I sold my car and I took the $7,000, and that's what we used to do the pilots and the shooting for this Taste the Islands series I wanted to do. So I had all this material and just got annoyed with everybody because they weren't jumping in and really helping to try and make it something that would be real and whole. And so I started recording myself in my living room, reading the news and whatever, and I'd put it up on Jamaicans.com and Caribcast.tv and started building a following and pitched this series to people in the Caribbean. At the time, it was called the Caribbean Diaspora Weekly. And it became picked up. I'm giving you the truncated version. It became picked up it was no longer news. I'd go out and do interviews with influential people in the community, and had Chef Irie do a little cooking segment, and just the little quick things that I could control myself. I was on camera myself. I was editing myself. I was doing all of this stuff myself. And that eventually became a product called Island Origins, which was a television show. Instead of being the Caribbean Diaspora Weekly, which was kind of difficult for people to remember and what have you, it was rebranded as Island Origins. And so that became a TV series that was broadcast. It's actually still on television, I think, in 20 plus Caribbean countries. It's available here on a TV station, a public television station in South Florida, not public access, but part of the PBS network. Earlier this year, so your listeners are aware as well. Taste the Islands did actually get onto television a year after it had been recorded, and I had everything sitting on my hard drive. And after I had done my own show and understood how to package and get stuff together and get it organized and ready for television, we did have the opportunity to present it to one of our local PBS stations down here, who sent it off to American Public Television, who asked, can we get this thing ready by X date? And, we did. I'd love to talk more about that story when I can. But we got it off to American Public Television, and, a year and a half after it was recorded, it was available in 40 plus US states. We've now gone on to the second season of Taste the Islands as our national broadcast. And Island Origins, the magazine, has actually come out of the event that we did for the launch of the second season of Taste the Islands, where, I'm allergic to boredom, as I'm sure you can tell right now by now.
Right.
And instead of doing a regular program for this fabulous launch event that we did called the Taste the Islands Experience, I wanted to have something that people would not just breeze through, take home, throw away, that they would actually keep it in their homes and hold it as a point of pride. And so we did the Island Origins magazine. That branding is so strong, and I thought it was so powerful that let's make that the title of the magazine and not something just tied to food and the show. And so that's how the first Island Origins magazine came about. And we're actually now in the process of getting the second issue out, which is a money, that one was culinary because we were doing the cooking show. The second issue is a money and business issue. And I'm just really proud of our team and how it's come together, how it's all looking and coming together. And I do have to shout out the person who introduced us, Annette Davidson, who has, she's been a consistent supporter. Me and her are like sisters. We fight and then we make up and then we do stuff together and then we don't do stuff together. But she, I have people I call them angels all the time. I have angels around me all the time who have just been really supportive, whether it's by resources or helping with their own two hands or building relationships or whatever it is. And so that's how, to answer your question, that's how we got to the point of Island Origins now.
Wow. So let's go back a little bit. So Taste the Islands came first, the TV show, before the magazine.
The TV shows came before the magazine.
TV shows. Yes. Okay. So was Taste the Island the first TV show that you pitched and that was picked up, or Island Origins? Trying to get the timeline together.
I don't even remember the timeline at this point. It's such a blur. We actually did a pilot for Island Origins before Taste the Islands. We did the pilot for Island Origins. People loved what the pilot looked like. We did it on the beach, and we had little interviews and stuff, and a little kitchen segment with Chef Irie. And that never took off because I couldn't find the funding for it. Somebody said to me, instead of doing all of that, the easier thing to do is a cooking show. Like, it's one location, everybody loves food and cooking and whatever, so do something that's a cooking show. And so we left that Island Origins pilot, which I sometimes forget about now. I did it with a girlfriend of mine called Nicole Hilton, who was actually the host, the co-host with Chef of what became Taste the Islands. It was that little cooking segment we did in the same kitchen with the same Chef Irie and Nicole, who was my partner on screen in that Island Origins pilot that we did. We flipped that, and he became the main culinary personality, and she was like the host who was doing the intros and the tasting and what have you. And that's how Taste the Islands as a pilot project came about. And I do want to tell you about that story because that's the most powerful story that I have in my life. We shot what ended up being 7 episodes over a course of 3 days at my friend Allison's house. And as I said, I put them together. I edited them as much as I could because I wanted to be ready. There was a call going to come from somewhere in the universe, and I didn't know where it was going to come from. So I readied these 7 episodes, and they weren't full enough. Like, Chef was still nervous, and so some things were kind of, we'd say in Jamaica, buck shuffling. They weren't flowing the right way. So I knew we'd need maybe 30 minutes of content, and we had 15 to 20 minutes of content for each episode. So it sat there on I had one that was a good full episode, and it sat there on my computer for about a year while I was off building up this other Caribbean Diaspora Weekly thing. And what was happening was that I had the stations in the Caribbean were saying it has to be this type of format. You have to make sure it's cut to this exact length. You have to do this. You have to do whatever. And so I had to learn how to package the programming the right way to get it onto first the Caribbean stations. And then we found a CW affiliate here in South Florida that was willing to take the show as well. And we had to find local sponsorship, but it wasn't the full production. It was just the amount to get the show on air. And so I also had to learn how to package it for television broadcast with these people here in America. And so I had the Caribbean standard, and then I moved on to the American standard. And looking back after everything, it was, the universe does everything the way it's supposed to happen. Had we had that PBS opportunity at the original time, I would have probably done a whole lot of stuff wrong and had a whole bunch of penalties imposed on us and whatever because of just incorrect formatting. When everything happened with public television at the national level, we were ready because we had now gone through all the processes and all of this stuff. And so they called us and they said, are you going to be able to have these 7 episodes ready for us to ingest in January and then start broadcast in April? And I said, yes. And I didn't know how it was going to happen because we didn't have the first dollar to get it done.
But you said yes.
I said yes in faith. And that has happened so many times in life.
You gotta do it.
You gotta do it. And so I said yes and called on again all of my connections. So we called up our friends at Inner Circle and we called up our friends at VP Records and they got us Maxi Priest. And I called up Atto Bolden, who is an Olympic, an Olympian who is now an NBC sports analyst. And, he'd been a guest on Island Origins or the Caribbean Diaspora Weekly as it was called at the time. Kevin Little, who I used to tour with, called him up and saw if all of these people would just help us to create some additional content to just fill out the rest of the show. And everybody was happy to come to where we were. Kevin opened his home to us. Inner Circle opened their studio to us. And, everybody kind of jumped in because this was going to be the first Caribbean series with Caribbean hosts and people with Caribbean accents on television at a national level like this. And, as the leads, we weren't peripheral people or people that came on for a one line here and there. We were the show. Mm-hmm. And so we really had the support of the community. And the part about it that was so powerful to me is that we were supposed to start delivering the episodes. And with PBS, or it's American Public Television was the distributor, not PBS. But with that whole network of stations and this distribution system, it's like a big lease time station, but not exactly. You have to pay an insertion fee for them to put it into the system, and then they do whatever else they do. But you have to pay something out of pocket. And I had no idea where that money was coming from. And the day that the money was due to the station, I was calling everybody I had been knocking on doors for by this time. I called Grace Foods, I called this, and the Jamaica Tourist Board. And at 5:00 the evening that the money, the check should have been delivered, I had texted and called everyone. And I was just like, nobody has answered me and I'm not going to freak out. I'm just going to make sure that when the facility comes to get this thing done, I'm ready. And I sat there in my office just editing and crying, crying. And at maybe like 6:05, I got a text from the CEO of the Jamaica Tourist Board, and he said, Jamaica's going to support you. Mm. And the check that we got was the exact amount that we needed to cover the costs of putting the show on air.
Now, how did that feel in that moment? Did you cried?
I cried. I ran next door to the guy across the hall in the other office. I cried. I was like, oh my gosh, what's the matter with you? I'm so happy. It was this whole dramatic episode.
But the fact that for everyone listening to catch, the fact that you kept going, you didn't stop, even though you didn't know how, because you suppose it would have come through and then you weren't ready because you had given up in the middle of the process. And then you kept faith and kept moving, and it rarely happens how you think it's going to happen, right?
Exactly. And that has been the ongoing theme. Like, I never know how something is going to happen. And I've heard entrepreneurs say, don't worry about how it's going to happen. Just decide what you're doing and get started.
Right. You never know the how. Exactly. Now, tell us a little bit about and I'm sure every process is different, but for people listening who might be interested in this, tell us about the process of pitching, if you will, to PBS or public television. Is that something that you just figured out how to do, or what was your process like?
That was a series of happy coincidences. So Chef Irie, there are, for those who don't understand the public television network of stations, they're all independently owned stations that subscribe to PBS. So when you look at your local ABC station or your local NBC station, it may be owned by Sinclair Broadcasting, but they are licensing the ABC name and ABC programs. And so they may have some kind of different programming, local programming throughout the course of the day. And in the evening, they're all showing the same things from NBC or ABC. It's the same thing with PBS. they're independently owned stations. So you may see different programming throughout the course of the day, but then you're going to see Masterpiece Theater in the evening, etc. So you have to go to your own local PBS station. And me not knowing this at the time, I had gone to our a different one called WLRN in our local Florida area, and they just kind of shot me down. They never paid attention. They were like, "Oh, why do you think, women knitting and watching these other travel shows and whatever are going to care about some guy from the Caribbean?" And so they shot me down, and I didn't follow up with any other PBS stations. And Chef Irie, somewhere down the line, was like, "Oh, what happened to that show that we shot last year?" I said, "Well, it's on my computer, and I don't know what to do with it." She said, I know a lady at PBS. Let me link you with her and see if something can happen." So he said it in such a way that I'm like, okay, maybe this is a secretary or something. When he actually did the introductory email, it was the CEO of
Wow.
Never know. There you go. The stronger of the two PBS stations down here, which was called WPBT2. They're now rebranded to South Florida PBS. But they, I sent her the pilot, and she liked it, and she said, "Oh, I'm going to share it with our team and see if they're interested." I didn't hear from her for 2 or 3 weeks. And to show you how important follow-up is, I sent a follow-up email, because I could have gone, "Oh, well, she hasn't come back, so she's not interested," which was where I was inclined to go. But my sales training, I guess, or sales experience said follow up with her. And I just sent a simple email, "Hey, just a quick follow up to see if what your team thought of the video. Is there some kind of suggestion you can give us to make it stronger or whatever?" She goes, "Oh, no. I shared it with everybody and they loved it. Can you guys come in for a meeting?" And in that meeting, I will say very proudly to your listeners that myself as the woman in my group, and Dolores as the woman at her company, she had her 2 men in suits, and I had my 3 men in suits. I had Chef Irie in his suit. I had Tyrone, who is one of my broadcast partners. I had Lukey, who is a 40-year veteran of television and broadcast, who is also a partner of mine. And we had our power teams in there, and it was the 2 women talking to each other. So kudos, snaps up to us for that. Right?
I love that image.
It was fabulous. It's one of my favorites that I go back to every now and again. But yeah, no, she said to me that day that we get pitched literally hundreds of products every week. And so you were lucky that we already know Chef Irie and love him. And it was also a good thing that you were prepared. You had a fully fleshed out pilot. Yes, there are some things that we're going to ask you to tweak. It's going to be a grueling process, because PBS's standards of delivery are much more rigorous than other broadcast platforms. But you were just in the right place at the right time. You were lucky to have us pay attention to you. And yes, we actually like what you're doing. I will say, they kind of gave us a nudge after that and said, we sent the pilot off to American Public Television, and within 24 hours, somebody from the TV station said to us, they really do like the show. I think it's going to get picked up for national broadcast. But there is a process that they have to go through. There's a voting process, and fortunately at the time they had a great community, I forget, his VP of community outreach or something like that he was called. And he had sent the video, I had a private YouTube link, and he had sent that video to several of the other PBS programming directors around the country. And so I was seeing the view number tick up. And so we already had support by the time the event came around, where everyone was supposed to vote on whether they wanted this program in the system or not. And we ended up with 135 yes votes out of the 300 stations, and it ended up being picked up by a lot more than that. And at the end of it all, we were people could see us from 86% of television households in America by the time the blanket coverage had been picked up for this TV show. So we're really, really proud of that process.
I'm proud of you too. That's amazing. Now, a couple of things that I wanted to mention that was so profound as you told us the story. You're an example for everyone listening. You're an example of someone who knows how to do the work before you know the how. Which you mentioned earlier. But sometimes, for a lot of us, we get stuck in, I don't know how this is going to work. And then you're not doing the work. You're just sitting and worrying about how you're going to make it happen. So you're such an example. So thank you for sharing that part of your story. You're such an example of that. And then you also mentioned about luck. And the saying, luck is when preparation meets opportunity.
Yes.
So again, you were so prepared, and they were probably surprised at how prepared you were in doing it. And then also you're an example of, I wrote some things down. Also, you're an example of taking your work seriously. And a lot of us think we're taking things seriously, but it sounds like you are this type of person anyway. But just with what you've described, is you wanted to make sure that it looked a certain, even if not perfect, you only can do what you know to do, right? But that you took care to make sure that it looked a certain way, and you got the right host and that kind of thing. So you're such a great example of all of those things.
Thank you. And I will say we still have a lot of challenges. Like, by no means was it perfect.
Right.
People in the TV industry will look and go, people at a different level in TV industry will go, oh, it was so cheaply produced. Yes. I mean, I had $7,000 to make a whole season of television show. We pulled students from the art institutes, and they were using their own cameras and what have you. But we told a good story, and it was entertaining. If you're into food and whatever and culture, you were entertained, you learned things. And, the message that we wanted to get across came across. You talked a little bit about the secret was a pivotal thing for me. When I watched that thing, it was a very special, very well connected program. I watched it. I didn't read the book. And there was a quote in there. Yeah, there you go. I can't find my DVD and I want to smack myself. But anyway, there was a quote in there: out of nothing and out of no way, a way will be made. And I say it all the time to myself. It just floats around in my mind. I'm not going to suggest that everyone do this, because I've had a very precarious existence. As I said to you, there have been times when I don't know how I'm going to live, I'm going to pay my rent, and every entrepreneur will tell you this. Tyler Perry talks about sleeping in his car and all this kind of stuff. Fortunately, I've only had to ever do that one night. but I don't have children. I'm not married. Maybe it would be better if I were married, because it wouldn't just be me depending on me, but it would also mean that there's somebody else looking at me going, Calibe, why are you doing this crazy stuff? Mm-hmm. And so, I know I burden my family. I know I burden people around me sometimes, because I'll go knock on David's door and ask him for a bowl of cereal because I can't bother to go to the supermarket, but it's because I'm over here at my computer doing work, and I don't want to I'm that kind of workaholic where if I'm working on, I don't want to get up and do anything else. I just want to focus on the work. And I don't think that that's a good thing for every type of personality. I don't even know if it's a good thing for myself. All I can say to you is that from my own experience, I know that I'm in a position now that, we're in the process of looking for financing to take us to another level. And instead of me now going and saying, oh, well, I have this idea to do a television show, I can say I have 2 successful seasons of a national broadcast in the US, which is also available in Canada and the Caribbean and Brunei. I can say I have another Caribbean lifestyle series that's been broadcast in the New York tri-state area and in the Caribbean and in the UK. I can say we have, what's now going to be 2 successful editions of a magazine that when we ask people who took it up, do you know where it is? They can tell me, yes, it's on my coffee table. Yes, it's in my office. Yes, it's in my bathroom. They know where it is, because it means so much to them to see themselves reflected in a way that is, well put together and doesn't look so haphazard and flung down and, oh, I'm just, trying a thing, as we would say in Jamaica. We have that track record now, and I'm very faithful that the money part will come, and when it comes, we'll be now prepared for it. The same way that I didn't know how the TV show was going to get on the TV, but I was prepared for it. I feel like at this point, I understand the processes and the things that have to happen, and I understand tightening your belt, and I understand, because I've now done everything with my 2 hands. Nobody can tell me, oh, this can't be done or that can't be done. I can get on the computer and do it myself and show you how to do it and train you how to do it. But it's now time to step away from that, step away from doing everything with your own 2 hands, and delegate and build a team and find people who execute better than you. Right. And, figure out how to run the business of everything that we've been doing. And that's where I am now in my process.
I love it. And as you mentioned, you get to the point where you decide when you either can or need to bring in other people. But in the beginning, I know some of us as entrepreneurs, we feel guilty or guilt ourselves that, oh, I'm doing everything myself and I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Right. Well, in the beginning, you might have to. You probably will have to, right? Yeah. I know I certainly feel like that, doing social media and I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and what's going on. But the idea is to get one, as you have, traction and to build whatever you're building and then move on, knowing that you can bring in someone else who, at least if they can do it, people say 80% as good as you or better, then you're doing fine and you can focus on the bigger picture things.
Exactly. And I will share this as well. What I've been finding is that I'm finding people who do the tasks better than I do and who are more affordable than I would have been if I were doing it. So I value my time at a certain, I'm not paying myself obviously, but I value my time at a certain level, but I'm now finding people who are way better at doing the graphics of the magazine and are way better at writing and editing these stories and are way better at shooting and what have you. So I'll still I'll still be the person who's in charge of the direction of where everything is going. And I understand the processes, but you can pay people a decent, a moderate salary, and they're still doing things way better than you would have. And you can find people on Fiverr and Upwork and all of these, platforms that do a way better job at your social, even your social media. Like I know people on these platforms who for $10 or $50 will build you a huge following. And, there are so many resources out there in the world right now. There's not an excuse, other than you don't know what they are. Because you go online and you don't know whether this person or that person is reputable or, you have to do the research or find somebody to do the research for you or ask for suggestions from other people. But there really is every resource and every avenue for the things that you need to get done.
Absolutely. And those people are specialists in their different areas too, as opposed to whereas we try to do everything. There's people who focus on social media or focus on editing and that kind of thing. Exactly.
And I would love to also say that at this point in my journey, I'm realizing that I've always known I can't do everything myself, and I've always wanted to have partners. I'm now at the point where I am just jumping into not just jumping into partnerships with random people, but jumping and saying, I can't control everything, so let me relinquish control to somebody else and hold those people accountable. So I now have two partners. These are two people I have worked with before. They have been willing to put in some of their own money and their resources and their contacts into this business. And we do hold each other accountable. And when people see me working feverishly like a mad woman, they understand that, no, you can't just sit over there and look and expect that stuff is going to happen. Like, I'm going to hold you accountable. You need to hold yourself accountable. And when a ball is dropped, don't say, I didn't tell you to do something. You're not my employee. You're my partner. And so we're at that stage now. I mean, kudos to you if you can find somebody who is at that level with you and is passionate with you about what you do as you are. I didn't go to university in this country. I never went to school for video production or media or any of that. And so it's I guess it's different. It's more difficult to get married when you're older than when you're younger, because you're set in your ways. You're set in your ways. So it's been more difficult for me to find people who are really willing to jump in with both feet to what I'm doing. But I really have great partners, Tyrone from Carib Xavier from Jamaicans.com, Lukey Chong, who is the 40-year veteran I told you about. David Muir is my actual partner in the business as a part owner right now. Allison Hunt is as well. She's prolific in event production. And so we have this great history among us of, the traction of the stuff that I have done that's visible at a particular level. They all have connections and a great track record of their own. And we're now kind of just pooling our resources and our, everything to just bring this Caribbean American aesthetic and lifestyle to a mainstream audience, which is what my company's mission is.
And you also have a festival, right? I think you kind of mentioned that when you were telling us the story, but tell us about the festival that you've created as well.
The Taste the Islands experience. So what would happen is that we'd get people on social media writing or saying, I'm coming to Miami. How can I get some food from Chef Irie or Chef T? Or where can we find these guests? Or where's your guys' restaurant? Or, and we didn't have anything. And also a note to your listeners, when I started the concept of Taste the Islands, I was calling around to the rum companies, which you can't do on PBS, I didn't know at the time, but calling around to, the Royal Caribbeans and the travel agencies and the Expedias and the whoever. And the response was, oh, you're doing a Caribbean cooking show, so it's for Caribbean people to watch. And I'm like, no, when you turn on your television and you look at an Italian food cooking show, it's not for Italian people. Right. The Mexican cooking show is not for Mexicans. Like, why would you ask me that? And people seem to think that the Caribbean community is this insular thing that we don't, that we're a novelty, or we're, a little asterisk, or we're a vacation spot and nothing else.
Even though everyone eats the food.
Everybody eat the jerk chicken and the curry goat and all of that,
Right.
Yeah. So I'm trying not to slip into my accent too much.
It's okay. We love it.
But yes, we are in the pop culture. We are in the social consciousness. Everybody knows that Jamaican. Everybody has eaten that piece of jerk chicken or whatever. And so for me, it was like, we have the jerk festival. We have we have these events that our community comes out to. I want to do something that, just like the television show, where 80% of our viewers are non-Caribbean and non-Black, that we're introducing our culture and our flavors and our essence to a mainstream audience. And so what happened is that, to coincide with the second premiere, the second national premiere of Taste the Islands, we started doing the Taste the Islands experience, which is a culinary experience. We say fabulous gourmet food, fabulous people, something like that. It's a nice tagline that we have. And so it was really this fabulous event that we had. As I said, from that corporate experience working at the hotel, I try and associate myself with people of influence as much as possible. So it was co-sponsored by the mayor of Miramar. We did it at their cultural center, which is a lovely building. We had the consuls general from Jamaica and from Barbados and from Haiti there. The minister of tourism from Haiti was there. It was really a nice high-end event. We did have more Caribbean and Black American people there than anyone else. And we want to maintain that base of support, but we also want to open this up to a wider audience. As we said, we want Caucasians and Asians and every other culture to come and experience what we have at a level that makes them feel comfortable, not feel like they're in the islands and with their toes in the sand, but like they would at the South Beach Food and Wine Festival. They're having gourmet bites, but with our Caribbean influence in there. And so we wanted, we'll do our main event as an annual event here in South Florida. And we had 500 people at the last one. I want to get to 1,000 to 1,500 in the next one. But we also do satellite events. So we had done one with Annette in New York. We're going to do one in DC later this month, and that's co-sponsored by Fort Lauderdale, which is our partner here. We want to do these culinary events, maybe at a smaller level elsewhere in the country, and maybe as a destination event in the Caribbean and what have you. We're talking to Bahamas about doing a destination version of it there. But the whole idea of the company is, the name of the company is Island Syndicate. And we say we're a Caribbean American lifestyle brand. We're a media, arts, and entertainment company that produces exceptional content and unforgettable experiences inspired by the Caribbean and geared toward a sophisticated mass media audience.
I like it.
Right. And so it's a 360 thing. If you're coming on with us as an advertiser or a sponsor, you're getting print media, you're getting online media, you're getting broadcast. We do the Facebook Lives. We're starting to do that as a weekly actual sit down at a round table in a nice setting kind of thing. And you're getting the live experiences, not just in South Florida, but elsewhere in the country. And so it's a whole brand that we're building together.
I love it. Now, I'm going to ask you later about the links and websites where people can go and find out more, but I definitely want to know where people can find out about the festival and the TV show. So have those things in mind. We'll bring them up later, because it sounds yes. I'm sure people will want to know, especially if they're in DC or these different areas where the festival is coming and all that good stuff.
Right.
So what would you say that entrepreneurship has taught you about yourself as a woman?
I think it has taught me that I can do anything. And that anything, that statement always sounds so superfluous, and I hate hearing just things like that are so sound so random, but you really can do anything. And it doesn't mean that that anything that you're trying to do is going to happen tomorrow the exact way that you see it. But I started a magazine without ever having printed anything like this in media. I've been writing. I've been a columnist for one of our most widely circulated black newspapers here in South Florida. So I know a little bit about writing. I obviously know about media. But I put that together in my living room, and it's something that leaves an impression on everybody that picks it up. We did this event, and by no means was it executed perfectly, but we started with $0 and ended up not breaking even, but making a few $1,000s in profit. Who does that? I started putting a television show together with the $7,000 from the car that I sold, and we're now 2 seasons in, 2 national seasons in. So I'm not where I want to be. Sure, I'd like to be where Empire is and where Scandal is and where Shonda Rhimes is in her career. And I'd like to be where Essence and Black Enterprise are in terms of their media conglomerates that have the print and the broadcast and the event side of it. These are the people that we want to emulate. But I'm doing this with zero background in it, zero capital investment to start. It's just by visualizing and deciding that this is what is going to happen, that it's all happening. And it amazes me sometimes because you're in the rut and you're in the day-to-day of getting your hands dirty and doing all of this stuff by yourself. Sometimes it's like, I need some clothes. I don't have any money for clothes. And who's going to cook some food? Because I don't want to cook. Do I have to go out and get fast food again? And it's very humbling to be in the midst of trying to do all of this stuff without a huge infusion of capital. But at the end of the day, you kind of look back and look at the bio that somebody will ask you for every now and again, and you keep updating it, and you're like, oh my gosh, I did all this stuff. Right. With the no money and the limited resources, but really with the support of a fabulous team of people who, you need support. I've learned that you need support, whether it is money or it is other things. And you need that belief that you can do anything.
That's right. And remembering, too, that, as you said, looking back at your own bio or just looking back at how far you've come, but also those people that we admire. I admire Shonda Rhimes and many others, too, just thinking about where they started, which sometimes we all forget. We just see, especially with social media now, the highlights of everyone's life. But it's like, you don't remember when, as you mentioned, Tyler Perry was sleeping in his car or all these other stories of people when they went through these times. So this is all part of the journey.
You asked me, you shared some of your questions with me earlier, and you asked me about, I'd written an article in the first issue of Island Origins magazine that says the choosiest beggar. Right. Or there was a section in an article that referred to me being the choosiest beggar. And I am, there's an expression that says beggars can't be choosers. I completely disagree with that. I don't care whether I'm asking you I shouldn't say I don't care, but regardless of whether I'm asking you for money or favors or whatever it is, if it's something that is going to reflect back on me, it has to be Calibe quality, Calibe standard, Calibe whatever. I'm not going to give you something that is a substandard product. And whether you've paid me or not, if I agree that I'm going to do it, I'm going to put my 100% into it. And that's what I expect of people, even if I'm asking you for a favor or asking you to help me with something and we don't know when you're going to get paid. The quality of what we do has to be the best possible within your resources. If you can't do it, or if you're doing it at a substandard level, I will happily tell you, I appreciate your willingness. I am going to pass and move on to something else. So,
and that's so true too. Sometimes we have to pass on even the offer for some free assistance, because I get that a lot, which I'm grateful for. Sometimes people say, oh, I would love to help. I'll do this and this for free. One, I know that only can last for so long, and I only want that to last for so, unless you're interning, obviously. But you want to get someone that they feel a sense of accountability. And
exactly.
That kind of, right. So being the choosiest beggar, I love it.
Yep.
So in closing, Calibe, what would you say if you think over your life and career and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally? Who would that be, and what would you say?
My pretty mommy, and I thank her every single day. As I said to you, I've not always been financially successful. She doesn't, pay rent for me or give me tons of money, but every now and again, when I'm on my face and I literally don't know how the next meal is coming, I'll see $100 pop up in my bank account. It's little things like that. I'll have a project that I need to cover, and I have to borrow some money off of a credit card, and she'll lend me that money and I pay her back. But, in just believing in, she calls her children geniuses. And one of them is very successful in terms of money. And there's another one who is Calibe, who is this creative genius, I guess, but has not necessarily been financially successful yet. Yes. And I will always say yet, and I know it's coming. I don't worry about it. And I think, I don't know if she has the same faith in me that I have in myself, but I don't ever feel like she does not have faith in me. I don't ever feel like she doubts that whatever it is coming. She always wants the best for me. I never question her motives. I may question whether she wants me to go forward with this particular project or do something more safely, but I never question that what she wants is the best for me. And having that person who, I'm not going to say she always listens to my problems and stuff, because she's a lady. She likes to go party and likes to listen to positive and whatever. So I can't whine to her and stuff, but she will always say to me, Calibe, you'll figure it out. I don't even worry about you. Bye. I'm going to this party.
I love it. She knows you have it.
Yeah. You'll figure it out. You got this. Yeah. Yeah. So
and even
my pretty mommy, Clover.
Oh,
yeah.
That's beautiful. I love it.
Yes.
And as you said, even if she doesn't either understand or have quote unquote faith in what you're doing, she has the faith in you.
Exactly.
And sometimes that's all we need. Just have faith in me, even if you don't get what I'm doing right now.
Exactly. Some people have it in a husband or a wife or a pastor or whatever. I have it in my mother, and I have it in my partners as well. The list of people that I kind of reeled off to you earlier, all of them have really shown great faith in me and the projects and what we're all doing together.
So tell us how we can support you. As I mentioned, I would love to hear the website so people can hear it, but I'll have links to everything. But give us how to get in touch with you and follow you on social media, all that good stuff.
Okay, awesome. You can reach me if you want to reach me directly. Calibe at Island Syndicate is the best way. Spelled exactly as it sounds. Calibe is my name. Or support at Island Syndicate. That comes to me if it's easier to spell. Our websites, and I'm not going to promise you that they're all properly updated because, again, too many things going on. Right. But Taste the Islands TV is for the TV show. Island Origins Mag, as in Island Origins Magazine, but Island Origins Mag is the magazine.
And that's .com. Island.
Correct. .com. And it's islandoriginstv.com. As well. And then, we're on social media. Look for Island Origins or look for Taste the Islands or Taste the Islands TV. And we're on all the pertinent social media platforms. I'm not going to tell you we're on, Tumblr and all these other things, but Pinterest, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Island Origins or Taste the Islands or Taste the Islands TV. And if you look for Calibe, there's actually a few Calibes, but Calibe Thompson or Calibe, Calibe, and you'll find me everywhere.
And the TV show, we can see where it broadcasts by going to islandoriginstv.com or just check our local PBS stations.
So Island Origins as a TV show only shows in South Florida. It's on Beacon TV, which is channel 19 if you're down here, or I forget what it is on DirecTV, 60 something. But Taste the Islands,
right?
Taste the Islands. They did a 14-week run or a 16-week run, I think, on Create TV. If you go to createtv.com and just look for Taste the Islands or Taste the Islands with Chef Irie, whichever, it'll come up and tell you where it's broadcasting in your area. They did a 14-week run over the summer. It may have gone out of circulation for the moment. It probably will come back again next year. But your local PBS station, just, check their lineup and see if they're broadcasting it. As I said, everybody's independent, so it's not going to be the same here as in DC or in New York or everywhere else. But check your local PBS station and call them and ask them, you want to see some Caribbean programming. call APT and make sure that you're getting Taste the Island so that we can see it, in our local area. That is how you can help us directly. And if you want to have a Taste the Islands experience brought to your local area, we don't know the sponsors and the people who can actually support it, the people who would come out to an event like that. Give us a call. Tell us, hey, we'd love to have a Taste the Islands experience in our community over here. We'll, help you connect all the dots, but, come and produce this event over here. And we're happy to do that. We want to bring Caribbean culture, Caribbean American culture to an American audience. So wherever you see a synergy, please give us a call, and we'd love to be there.
I actually have a woman, Faven, who was on the show. She does fantastic events here in Atlanta, which is where I am. But she has a food festival coming up. I think it's later this year. In fact, I know it is in November. And she's trying to do something a little different. Maybe I can connect the two of you just to talk and see if there's any kind of synergy or just to even know each other.
Right. That would be awesome.
Yeah, she's from Ethiopia.
Oh, nice. Very. Yes. I met an Ethiopian, a student yesterday at a conference I was doing. But I want to also point out the magazine in print is only distributed here in South Florida. We do want to start sprinkling it in Atlanta and New York and, up the East Coast in the Caribbean hubs. If you want to read the magazine, if you go to Island Origins Mag, there is a link there to the online version of it. So everything that we're seeing here, you can see online at issue. And all the articles are going to be on the website as well, which we will start to beef up a little bit more with content in between, quarterly issues, as soon as we have the resources to do that. So, thank you to all your listeners for listening. I hope I've been able to share something useful or inspirational in some way. And I am so happy for what you're doing and proud of what you're doing as well.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to talk to you, to hear your story, and to just such the important, I just feel like it was just a great motivation about keep going. Even if you don't know how it's going to work, keep going.
Absolutely.
Now, before you go, what's a parting piece of advice from you to our listeners about anything?
Just believe that out of no way and out of nothing and out of no way, a way will be made. That I can't say anything else other than that. Also, if you have a smarter way of going about things than I have, do it. If you have some money, invest it carefully and test what you're doing before you're doing it. Don't just go running off crazy like I have. And learn from other people's mistakes, but, just believe that whatever your vision is, if you believe that there's a way to get it done, that there is a way to get it done. It's just about finding that way. So that's it. Out of nothing and out of no way, a way will be made.
Excellent. Calibe, thank you. Hold on just a second.
Sure.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Calibe. To find out more about her, to find out about Island Origins, and to find out about Taste the Islands and all the wonderful things that she's up to, make sure to go to supportissexypodcast.com and just search Calibe. Calibe. Her show notes page will pop up with all of the links, the resources, and all the ways to get in touch with her. And now, whether this is your first time listening or your 339th time, I appreciate you being here. As I always say, it would not be the same without you. But what I'd love for you to make sure that you do, it would really help me, the show, and you, because you won't miss anything, is subscribe to the podcast. If you love it, you like what you've been hearing, you like this episode, and hopefully many others of all that we have up there on the podcast, please make sure you subscribe. And if you do love it, please leave a review. I love a 5-star review, but any feedback is appreciated. I want to be here for you. I want to be connected to you. So subscribe, leave a review, let me know what you're thinking. All right. So thank you again for being here. I appreciate you. And until next time, you know what to do. Go out there and create something sexy, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.